Hello and welcome back to the Trans Talk Hub podcast. I'm your host, Alyssa. Welcome again to our guest, Braxton.
Hello.
Welcome. And today we're going to talk about the representation that we have seen within Hollywood on trans-related topics, from the trans women's end, trans men end, and preferably, just so we can start on a good note rather than a bad note, we're going to start with the good representation side of things, because, we want to see the good before we just start, talking about everything bad. I want to first go ahead and show a trailer here. First, I guess, before I do, Braxton, have you had a chance to see the movie Boy Meets Girl?
I have not. I have not seen Boy Meets Girl.
Okay. Then this might be like a really good trailer to see. For me, it is a trans woman who plays a trans role, which I think is always great. And it's actually a good story. In my mind, doesn't paint her in a bad light. I will say, for me, I do wish that there was more representation for trans women who were into men. Because this kind of does both. Because you'll see in this trailer that she is going for like this cis woman, just because I think she's curious. She like meets with her and has conversations, and they kind of just get into each other for a little bit. And then later she starts to get back into the guy that's in the picture. But I feel like there's a lot of representation for trans women who are into women, not enough representation for trans women that are still into men.
Right. Yeah, I could agree.
How do you feel on that?
I could definitely agree. Yeah, I feel like most things that I have seen with trans women in them, I mean, I can think of a few where the main subject that they're interested in is a male, but majority of the time, yeah, they're usually into a female.
Yeah, I'd like to see personally, not because I'm saying I'm against it,
Sure, right.
To each their own, right? It's just that for me, I would like to see that representation, because a lot of these, like today, you will see the ones that I'm referring to generally are trans women who are into women. But like I said, nothing wrong with it. I just want to see different representation that kind of aligns to me, because for me, right. I am into men.
Well, I feel like most of the time when it is a trans woman that's into a man, it ends up not going too well. It ends up a little aggressive from the male. And that's not always the case. Like, there are several trans women that are in happy relationships with, cisgender men, and everything's fine. That the man's not taking advantage of them or abusing them or anything like that. But I feel like that's typically what that representation is, unfortunately.
For sure. I think that's what I want to see, is like that good relationship, like the one where they're married and they whether they adopt kids or whatever, like you get to see the full family dynamic. You don't get to me personally, I'm tired of only ever seeing trans women or trans men in roles where it's always the negative end, or they didn't disclose this, they didn't say that, so now they're getting hurt because of it and it's their fault and they're not a victim. They brought this on themselves, and it's like, I don't know. I'm tired of seeing that narrative.
Yeah,
but
same.
Let me share my screen here, and we'll watch this. And hopefully, those of you who are listening or viewing on YouTube, maybe you'll want to check it out as well.
It's Dick. I'm not just looking for sex. I want to find love. Maybe I should date girls.
I'm a fan. Check one out. See how you like it.
See your boyfriend?
No, we've been best friends since like first grade.
It is clear as day that boy has a crush on you, regardless of what he says.
You really shouldn't mess around with her. She has a fiance. Marines are nuts.
Are you a virgin too?
Yeah, with girls. It was just one innocent kiss. Sure, it won't happen again.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But just in case it should happen again, is it tight like a
Google time?
Robbie?
Oh, love that bathing suit.
I made it, actually. That's my real job. I'm a designer. Hopefully I'll be going to fashion school in New York this fall. Kind of waiting to hear back.
I know that you've always thought that she didn't totally approve. But that's something you do well to let go of.
It's a man below, but a girl up top, if you get my meaning, sir.
Stop calling her that! She is a girl, goddammit! Get that through your thick skull, she is a girl!
This is not a forever thing, and she has a wedding to prepare for.
Did you sleep with her?
It's none of your business. Don't you walk away from me. No matter what we look like or who we are, we're all just stumbling through life trying to figure it out.
Yeah, but unlike me, you all have an us to figure it out with.
I was a boy without a clue. I was a boy without you. Oh, maybe I am meant to feel that way. I guess it's time for me to feel afraid, so I can learn to beat it. I don't really know a thing about
the high school in this town. Who can survive it?
I was fat.
I had terrible acne.
And I was a boy, so that sucks.
Oh my god, that is amazing. I love that that's how they ended that trailer. I like the... I feel like you don't see enough of that either, right? Like the humor about it, being able to have a sense of humor about it. So that's cool. That was very cute. That was very cute. It looks like it would definitely be something that I would enjoy.
Yeah, honestly, I think it's my favorite movie that has to do with like the trans side of things, and I think it was painted in a pretty good light, honestly. And like I stated before, she is a trans woman, so I think it's awesome to see that there was somebody that they chose that was a trans woman. Not to say that a cis woman couldn't have did the role and done it well, but I am actually glad that they picked a good person to do it that happened to have been trans. So, but yeah, hopefully for those of you watching or listening, I guess if you're listening, you only really got the audio side of it all. But I definitely do think that if you want to learn more about different aspects and see like a certain angle on things, I think it's definitely a good watch. I don't really think there's like any negative things. I mean, sure, like from the there was some verbiage there that was used, but I think that's good because that shows the reality of what people say about trans women, like the male below and girl up top, certain people say those things about us, and it's unfortunate, but it's like that's reality.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's why like I liked it so much, because it seemed more realistic than most of the things that I see that feature a trans person, especially that's like open about featuring a trans person. So yeah, no, it looks really cute. I think that I haven't seen the movie, so I can't speak to it fully, but it looks like it was really well done.
I'm a fan of it, and I hope that... Oh, I think you cut out for me. What was that?
Oh, I don't think I said anything.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, your audio went out on my end, but yeah,
interesting.
I definitely think people should watch it and give it a shot. I think it's worth it, whether you're trans or not. If you're trans, I think, especially if you're like in the early side of it or not, I think it's a good film to watch, and maybe show the family. Maybe they'll see things from a different angle. You never know.
Yeah, kind of give people that live on the outside of it a little bit more inside perspective by like getting to see a story played out that is a little bit more accurate to the reality of being trans. Yeah, I think that's awesome. And even for trans people, like to see some representation like that, like it's nice to see something that can be beneficial for both sides of things. We see a lot of things that tear us apart or drive a divide between the two. So it's nice to see something that is more focused on like showing both sides. Like there's representation for both. Anybody can enjoy this. It's not a big deal.
Absolutely. No, I agree. What I want to show now is I know it's a lot more popular, so more people have probably seen this, but Euphoria. I think Euphoria with Jules' character. The person that played Jules was also a trans woman.
Mm-hmm.
So that was, in my mind, a pretty good representation. I mean, it definitely showed you very negative sides of it all, but I think there is some reality to that. Because like very early in the story, Jules gets involved with meeting a bunch of like random guys and stuff like that, and I think you get to see like how all that transpires. And while that might not be the same for me, I know a lot of trans women who get into that, and that's their whole thing, and they try to make money from doing that, and no hate to them, get your money however you want,
right? Make your bag queen. That's cool.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's real that it happens. So I think with that being said, it has to be a good representation because it does happen.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, Euphoria is another one of those that I haven't really seen. I've seen a lot of like TikTok clips and things like that. The first thing I was ever told about it was that it's like mostly kids kind of getting involved in things like teenage year kind of kids getting involved in stuff. I don't know how accurate that is. Again, I haven't seen it. Um, but it just didn't seem like it was something that I'd be interested in. But I've heard so many people talk about it, and especially the trans characters. So I feel like it's something I should probably at this point check out.
Yeah, so Euphoria as a whole, I think the main storyline is based on like the main character. She is like a struggling drug addict.
Mm-hmm.
She's like bouncing in and out.
Is that Zendaya?
Zendaya, yeah, her character is like bouncing in and out of the drug scene and all of that, and so like relapse and all of that. That's mainly what the show's about. But then you have like a lot of side stories within all of that kind of draw back into her, and like Jules is like a romantic interest at points, and
okay, interesting.
And then Jules has like her other side of things, but like, yeah, I mean, it is. I would definitely say it's like a high school experience.
Okay.
So they're definitely not adults, I guess you would say, but it's definitely like the high school scene. Like that whole thing is like how it is in high school, and getting through all of that stuff.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a lot of the reason I haven't watched it is just because I feel like it's going to remind me of a lot of my crazy things that I did in high school that I might not be super proud of. So I feel like I've just kind of like stayed away from it, but maybe some, exposure therapy would do me good. So I'll definitely check it out.
For sure. Yeah. I do want to, it's not like a full trailer on the like the series, but there is like a video that kind of just shows like Jules' journey, and it's just mainly like a video about her. It's only like
a
minute or two long. So if you're cool with it, I'll go ahead and share that. Let me swap the video here. Yeah, here we go.
Rue was the first girl that didn't just look at me. She actually saw me. The me that's underneath a million layers of not me.
So why'd you run away?
Rue?
Looks like my friend Jules was going through it a little bit there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't know. I think that whole, I mean, I wouldn't say the majority of Euphoria is about Jules, but I do think the part she's in, like I say, personally, I think it's good to go into those stories that she went through.
Yeah, I mean, it also looks like, she's enjoying herself. There's plenty of, good moments and things like it. It seems very balanced, even just from like that short clip.
For sure.
Which is really, it's neat because there are things that like, it's good to see that, yes, trans people struggle so that people can be aware. Yes, we struggle, but we also have like several happy moments in our life as well. And we get to like connect with people, and we connect with humans the same way any other human connects with another human. So it's cool to see that, especially because this is like a newer series, right? Like I'm assuming it came out a few years ago. That's when it started. So it's definitely more recent. And so it's cool to see that we're like moving towards this. This is definitely like a lot more positive representation, a lot more realistic. It doesn't seem like the whole, like it seems like the writers were actually invested in the character of Jules. Whereas I think in a lot of like earlier representation of trans people, the writers are using them more as like to add in a laugh or two. So it's cool to see that we're progressing.
Absolutely. Yeah. I enjoyed the balance take because I think like we spoke prior, it really kind of sucks to only ever see the negative side of things where it's like, are trans people ever happy? you know?
Right.
And that we have moments. We're not always sad, depressed. You know, we have those happy moments. Maybe in the very beginning, there's not a lot of happy moments because you're figuring things out. There's a lot of mental warfare going on. But I think there is a point where you get past that to a point. I mean, are we ever going to be past that fully? Probably not. We probably will have a battle throughout life with, you know, us being trans and certain things, but we can alleviate a good portion of that over time.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
So yeah, I want to see, let's see, what was the next one I was going to show here? So there's two more. There's one for Pose. Have you ever watched Pose?
Yeah, I've seen Pose.
Pose is, I think, really good. I mean, Pose is, of course, more for, like, you know, I would say, like, the gay scene, like just drag and all of that. But there is a lot of trans characters that are featured within Pose. I think her name is MJ Rodriguez. She's like the main person. Really great representation to have on that show. She was amazing. And so, yeah, for those who haven't seen it, I'm going to show like a little trailer here. I think that's another good one. I mean, like I said, it mainly is all about, you know, like ballroom, gay culture and things like that. But with all of that, for trans women, and to my understanding, trans men as well, that kind of dives into, it kind of mix and matches a little bit.
Yeah, I would definitely say so.
So yeah, let me get that pulled up.
Focus, children. It is time we remind the world who we are. Jackpot. Mother, what do we take? Everything.
The category is royalty.
How does someone as talented as you wind up dancing for a whole bunch of junkies?
I want to be a star.
You ever consider joining a house?
What do you mean?
Well, a house is a family you get to choose.
I have bigger dreams of performing at some ball. I have nowhere else to go.
Come here. It's that white boy again. Is this your first time doing something like this?
Whispering love.
Yes. What exactly is a ball?
Balls are a gathering of people who are not welcome to gather anywhere else.
Darling, the champagne is burnt.
This is what it's like to be a person at the top of the rainbow room.
What's better, the dream or the reality?
The reality.
What do you want out of life?
I want to be treated like any other woman. That's my dream.
Twirl. Baby, you are our secret weapon.
And that is how you do a ball.
I love Pose. I absolutely love Pose. It is so precious. It is so cute. I think it does a really good job of, again, showing the balance, showing like the struggles that a trans person might have, but also like the positive moments that a person has in their life. It also really shows like what the community is meant to be, which I really enjoy about that show. It is so like, you don't have a place to go. Let me take you in. Let me help you. Let me show you love for the first time in your life kind of thing. It's very, very cute. It's very precious. I absolutely love that show. I think it's incredibly done. Like, it could not have been any better, in my personal opinion.
For sure, I agree. And I think there was one statement in there that really got me, like even just in that trailer alone, was I just want to be seen as a woman.
Yep.
You know?
That's my dream.
Yes, like that's the first like representation of like a casual encounter, like sexually shown in a show, because those trans women were shown perfectly. I mean, realistically, a lot of the producers and things like that were trans as well. So I'm sure they had a really good, like, you know, word in how all of that was represented on screen. But I think that they did amazing because it was filmed very good.
Yeah.
And not to paint them in like a weird light or anything.
Sure. No, I mean, I think that was one of the things that stuck with me was the sex scene, right? Like, it's so casual. Like you said, it's just, it shows that like, it doesn't have to always be this like this fetish type thing, this big over the top thing. Like sometimes we just want to connect with people intimately the same way that other people do. Like it's following that same thing we were talking about earlier, where like it just shows like we're also just normal people. We can express love to people the same way that any other human does. It's not different just because we're trans. And I really love that show took the opportunity to do that and to give that representation, because you don't get that a lot of the times. A lot of the times it is an aggressive situation, and it is not an enjoyable situation between the two people. So it's cool to see that they took the time to put that in there.
Yeah, I really honestly enjoyed that whole series because I watched the whole thing from season 1 to I think
Same.
season 3 or 4. I can't remember.
I think it's 4.
It's been a while since I've seen it, but yeah, it was really good. I think one more I want to show here is, I think this is like a very, very short clip here. Yeah, it's only like 18 seconds.
Cool.
But did you ever by chance watch Orange is the New Black?
Yeah. Oh yeah, start to finish.
Yeah, I thought it was really, really good.
It was, yeah.
But Laverne Cox and her character of Sophia was really good.
Agreed.
This little video here only shows like 18 seconds just so you can see who Sophia is within the show. But I mean, and she didn't, I don't think she had like a lot of screen time. It was just like a little bit here, a little bit here, but she wasn't the focus, so it made sense. But I don't think there was one moment she was painted in a bad light. I mean, it's hard to speak, right? Because this is like a whole show about like prison and things like that. But I still think that they did very well in the representation side of it all.
Yeah, yeah. Then they show like, her struggle with her wife and, things like that. And they show a lot of real stuff, but they like, she cuts hair and she's like running stuff, she's like on top of her A game, doesn't take shit from anybody. Like I love her character. I think she's fantastic, but she does it with such grace and such, poise. Like I love Lauren Cox. Fantastic representation.
Yeah, I think the backstory is really where it gets a lot better on that end for her character and everything. And I think that's like some episodes down the line, especially, I don't remember if it was like middle to end of first season or second season, but it was definitely good. So yeah, I'm just going to share that. Just, I know it's an older TV series, so maybe more people have seen it at this point, but for those of you that haven't, I think it's definitely worth viewing. So let me swap to that.
I need some of these. I made my own couture. Commissary don't carry a size 13.
Is that duct tape?
Metallics are very in this season.
So very short little clip there, but I don't know, it was like a kind of a funny thing, and it's that comedy aspect, but a good comedy.
Right. I mean, and I think a lot of people get really up in arms about, trans women in prisons, which I have opinions on that too. I think that there's caveats to every situation. Everything is individualized. I know that there's a situation going on right now where there's a person that they've put in jail that's like 6'1", has been, sexually aggressive towards 2 individual children that I know of. And they're trying to put this person in a women's prison because they identify as a woman. So like in situations like that, obviously like, okay, maybe not. Right. But it's cool to see some representation where it's like, this is also happening. Like, sure, that the other side of things is happening, but there's also trans women that are just trans women. They're just people. They don't care about it because they could go to jail for whatever it might be, but people go to jail for the silliest things, right? Like it happens. So, I think that if they're just in there for something that's not aggressive towards another person, right, I don't see the issue with it. And I think it's cool to see representation of that and to show that like, and this is an actual trans woman. It's not a man playing a girl, Sorry, my dogs are going to go crazy.
Yeah, no problem. I agree with you because the thing is that like, I think personally, like, let's just say it's a trans woman. I think you could definitely tell like who the real trans women are if you look close enough. And I mean, I never, I don't guess really anyone ever plans to go to prison, but it's like, if you did something that locked you up in, in prison, then I think for one, they have to look on what the charge is. If the charge is like a sexual related charge, you should not end up in a women's prison if you're a trans woman. Now, if it's a non-sexual one, then I think maybe either think about putting them on a specialized wing or something, maybe not men's, because it's like, if you've been on hormones for years and you've had surgeries and things like this, probably not the best case. And either way, I think maybe there's enough stories now where I think maybe even investing in a certain wing for like trans people. It doesn't have to be this massive wing or anything like that. Sure. But I think an area just for safety for both them and other people. Because, like
everybody involved.
I mean, if you put a trans woman on like a men's section, you're talking about all kinds of like problems and things like that. And then potentially if you put them on a women's, it's issues potentially for the women. Correct. So I think at this point, since there is so many stories, I think some investment in like specific wards or like, I don't know, wherever they put them, I think should be maybe more specialized. But I think the biggest thing to keep in mind is it a sexual crime? If so, they need to go to a men's, or if they go to a men's, maybe still separate them, whatever. It just really depends on what the crime is. But I don't think like, because like you said, I mean, it's very dependent on the crime. I mean, you could go to prison for like fraud or something like that. Right. And just because you did like fraud doesn't mean that you would sexually hurt somebody or do something like that.
Especially if you are a fully transitioned person.
Right. Fraud's a huge thing, but it's not sexual.
No, not at all.
So I think for something like fraud, if you end up in prison for it, sure, you need to be in prison because you need to learn that that's not something you should be doing. But I think that, ultimately for somebody like that, there should be some figuring out on that end.
Yeah, agreed. Absolutely agreed.
So I guess now we're probably talking about the bad side of representation.
Oh boy.
Well, bad side and not so bad, because there is one that I want to like show here, which is the Danish Girl. For me, I watched the Danish Girl, and like there were definitely some moments that got to me because there were some portions that spoke to me, because the main whole thing of the Danish Girl is, I mean, that was about, I can't remember her name right off the top of my head,
Lily.
But she was basically like, she was basically like the first one to ever have, I believe, I could be mistaken here, but I think she was one of the first to ever have the bottom surgery on the trans woman's end.
Right.
So, there was a lot of like scenes in there that actually got to me and made me cry because it hit me on a personal level. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of people are upset. They're like, oh, well, they should have chose a trans woman or whatever. But we talked about this before, and it's like, it's not every movie do you have to have a trans woman. I mean, I do think that Eddie
Eddie Redmayne is his name.
Yes, I couldn't pronounce it there for a second, but yes, they did an excellent job. I thought. I don't know if you watched the movie, but I thought it was an exceptional movie. I mean, I think they won like an Oscar or whatever it was. I mean, it was amazing. I thought they did great, and because the story was written the way it was, and it hit me on a personal level, it's hard to say that it wasn't a good representation. Right. Maybe there was portions that were questionable, but I think there's always going to be that, especially in the Hollywood angle of things. Sometimes they don't like hit the reality side of things very well.
Right. No, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of most people's problem around that movie was the fact that it was a cis man playing a trans woman. But like you and I had talked about before we started the podcast, like sometimes that is more accurate to the story. Like if you cast a fully transitioned person to play this role, it's not as like authentic to the fact that like we're talking about the beginning of this person's journey when they are still presenting as male, and like that would be how they look. So it's just going to look a little different. And I think it just makes it more authentic, truly. Like, even though it's not an actual trans person playing it, like, I don't know. For me, I think that's what invokes the emotion more, is that it is representing the beginning of that journey by having somebody that hasn't gone through a transition or any of that. Like, they're just playing characters. They're actors. Like, sometimes people play like they've got cancer. They don't actually, do you want them to like actually cast a cancer patient? Like, it's just like a really weird, like specific thing to latch onto, I think. But I mean, I understand we need to see trans people and give trans people roles and things like that. Absolutely. But I think there's more fitting roles for an actual trans person to play than the beginning of a journey. Because a lot of the times too, that could probably make them dysphoric. There's a huge chance it would make them dysphoric to try to revert and look a certain way. So that's just my opinion on it.
No, I agree with you. That's actually what I was going to go into a bit is like, I'm not I'm not a person who does like acting or anything like that, but like I think that would be like a very dysphoric thing is to like play the beginning of all that, because like in the very beginning of that movie, they were playing like, well, I mean, at first it was like it seemed like a normal relationship until, I think the wife started like painting her and this and that. And that's what kind of like opened up her mind and was like, wait a minute.
Yep.
I didn't realize I felt this way. And it kind of like opened something up within her to realize that she was trans and that she needed to transition and this, that, and the other. But the very beginning of all that would have, at least in my mind, probably would be very, very dysphoric. So there's nothing to say that any trans woman would have wanted to play that role. If there's a trans related role where you don't have to like go back to, like detransitioning per se.
Right.
Yeah, sure. Most trans women would probably want to do that, but that's a lot of like re-struggling. Even though it's for a role, you're kind of like, damn, you look at yourself in the mirror, even just for like this Hollywood role, and you're like, damn, who is this?
Yeah, I'm not an actor either, but there is nothing in me that would like if there was a role out there. If there was a role out there that was requiring me to essentially like detransition for all intents and purposes, no, absolutely not. I don't want to wear a wig. I don't want to wear girl clothes. I don't want to put on makeup. I don't want to be presenting as feminine. So to me, I think that that's a very valid reason to not cast a trans person in a role where it is going to explore that part, and that's like a huge part of that character and you playing that character. So I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm going to go ahead and share that trailer just for those who may not have watched it. So let me load it up first. If it'll pause. Oh, there we go. Yeah, let me share my screen again, and then I'm going to share it for those who may not have seen the movie, and at least maybe after watching the trailer here, you might decide to watch it. I think it is fairly good representation if you aren't so onto thinking that a trans woman should have played the character.
Right.
I don't think so. I think they did very well. But yeah, we'll go ahead and watch the trailer. And those of you watching and listening, you can make your own determination.
The first time we met, she oppositioned me. She seemed so sure.
I was sure. He was so shy and mysterious. Is there something you'd like to tell me?
Is there something you'd like to know?
I'm your wife. I know everything. Could you help me with something?
You will not tell anyone about this.
Hello there. We're going to call you Lily. I want to sketch you. Lily. We should go out tonight. Give them something different. Lily. You're exquisite.
You're different from most girls. I feel I'd need to ask your permission before I kissed you.
Exactly what happened last night?
There was a moment when I wasn't me. There was a moment when I was just Lily.
But Lily doesn't exist. We were playing a game.
Something changed.
He's lost his way. He needs a friend.
Let me help. I think Lily's thoughts. I dream her dreams. She was always there.
I need my husband. I need to hold my husband. Are you all right?
The fact is, I believe that I'm a woman.
And I believe it too.
Surgery has never been attempted before.
You're my whole life. It could kill you.
It's my only hope. This is not my body. I have to let it go. I love you because you're the only person who made sense of me. who made me possible.
I think that's such a cute film. I love it so much. I love that movie. It's so good. I think it was really well done. It touches a lot of different topics all in one go, and it does it so tastefully. And I feel like Lily truly is the star of the show. And I don't know, just to get to watch that character develop and go through everything, I really related to most of it. I feel like they did a really good job of capturing the feelings of like when you start to discover it and when it clicks, and how scary that can be and how daunting that can be, especially if there's other people involved, whether it be a wife or parents or grandparents or whoever it is in your family. Like, they did a really good job of covering everything, every aspect. I think they did fantastic. I love this film. I think that it represents trans people very, very perfectly, absolutely perfectly.
Yeah, I would agree as well. Yeah, because I think the big difference, especially, well, I think the main thing has to be time period, right? Because this was like, I don't remember, was this like the 1800s or something like that, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, it was a long time ago. Yeah, definitely before like modern medicine, things like that.
Right. So I think like the journey of her figuring out who she was,
mm-hmm.
I think there would have probably been no better way to figure out than how it transpired. And, you know, I know for some people, maybe the majority nowadays, typically, you know, very early on. I know for me, I knew early on. Some people, not so much. Yep. Maybe teens, you figure it out. Maybe some people in their 20s, 30s figure it out. But, you know, and that's the thing, is it's different for everybody. And I think it's nice to see that it is different. I think this film showed that. A lot of that, I think, is due to the time period. There clearly was no social media. There was no nothing. You know, that was a time where you didn't have anything like that. So it's like, you know, you had to be exposed to something that made you feel a certain way. And I think for her, that was that artistic nature of being Lily and realizing, wait, Lily is me.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah, and I think it's cool too because, you know, I'm a person who, not to get controversial, but I don't necessarily believe that we should be teaching a lot of gender ideology type stuff in schools and things like that. And I think this really speaks to that, where like that's you discovering yourself, however that comes about. Like, that's a very important part of the journey. And to I don't know, to take that away, just kind of, I don't know, I think it takes away from the experience of being a trans person. Not all of it's great, you know, not all of it's rainbows and butterflies, but it's still part of the journey. It's part of who you are. It's part of discovering. It's when that click does happen, and it needs to be genuine, and it needs to happen in a way that is relevant to, you know, your life, your existence.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. You know, I'm against that as well. You know, on the last podcast, we talked a little bit about how California is forcing, like, parents to have their kids be taught gender ideology and all of this stuff. And it's like, you know, we both agreed that, you know, we didn't need that. We didn't need somebody to show us anything, to teach us anything. And I think there is a specialness to that. Like, I think for those who do think that this should be taught in schools, I think you should sit back and think about how you found out that you were trans and how that is actually special to you, because it is a special moment that you should hold on to. If somebody is teaching you in school about gender ideology, you're not finding it out for yourself.
No,
you're giving you're being given a moment to try to figure out if that is you or not.
Right.
I don't think I would have enjoyed that.
No, not at all. I feel like, I don't know, the first moment that I made the realization, like, with myself, it was it's such like a pinnacle in my story. It was like the turning point. And I did that on my own, and it was my own self-discovery. It wasn't that somebody put it out, like someone else put it on me or influenced this decision or whatever. And I'm not saying that's exactly what's happening in schools. Some kids are going to just do whatever and go with the flow because, oh, their friends are doing it, it's cool, whatever. But I don't know, it was very special to me, and I'm glad that it happened that way. It was very emotional, and it was very raw, and it was very human. And I think that is it's a lot of the reason that I know 100% without a doubt, this is who I am. I am a trans person, and there was absolutely no denying it because I got to that conclusion on my own, and it was real and it was deep. So I think that every trans person deserves to have that moment. It's very important.
Absolutely. Well, before I get onto the bad side of everything, for I guess all intents and purposes for both ends of everything, do you have like anything that you want to share, like more specifically, like for the trans men side of things, that you think is good representation, or anything you want to speak to? Or I don't know if it lets you share your screen or anything in here, or if you have anything you want to show, but maybe just something that you want to speak on in regards to that side of the Hollywood representation.
You know, I'm not like, I don't watch a lot. The things that I do watch, it's usually like adult animation or things like that. And a lot of it's because sometimes TV gets too real, and it's hard for me to, I've got a lot of that going on in real life already. I don't want to deal with it like in a, fairy tale form or whatever. But there's definitely been, I feel like, at least on my side of things, most of the time the representation I've seen of trans men, I feel like, is a lot more positive than it has been for trans women. Just like even historically, from like the beginning of us starting film and things like that, like trans women have always just kind of been the butt of the joke. I feel like a lot of the first like trans men characters I saw were usually tastefully done. I think the very first trans man character I ever saw was Max on the L Word. I feel like in that show, it wasn't the best representation, mostly because a lot of Max's characters, when they decide it's time to transition and they're taking testosterone, the whole representation of Max's character becomes this raging asshole who's controlling of his girlfriend and like throws stuff off the table, and it's just a ticking time bomb, which is a little accurate. When you first start testosterone, it's this new thing that your body's not used to. Yeah, I mean, when I was my first few shots, I was kind of an asshole initially. Right after the shot, couldn't help it. I was just kind of raging. I couldn't cry, which was kind of frustrating at times, which would make me really angry. But I wasn't dangerous, and I wasn't like, I could control it enough where I wasn't taking it out on people. It was just something I felt, but I that's not like accurate to, just because you start testosterone, it's not going to make you this terrible person, or, the way that men are represented. There's also a scene in that show where one of the sisters of like one of the main girls is telling Max, like, are you not like gonna regret this? Like, why can't you just be a super butch lesbian? Like, why can't you just be that? And he's like, because I want to feel whole, and then Max is like, or I guess, the other lady's telling Max, like, well, you're giving up the most precious thing, and that's being a woman. And it felt very like, I mean, the show's, a lesbian scene, a lesbian show. That's the main focus of the show. So it definitely felt like, especially at the time period that it came out, that lesbians were not very happy with trans men, and it kind of like gave that idea to people. So I remember seeing that and being like, because that was like very, very early on when I watched the L Word. I was pretty early on in my transition. I don't even know that I had really started presenting very masculine at this point. I just knew it was a thing. But other than that, like, the Fosters had a trans character that I thought was done really well. There's, a part where they're getting testosterone off the black market, and it's very harmful to their bodies. So it's kind of teaching you, like, you should go about this in the right way. And they were showing, like, there's a way to go about it in the right way. There's a scene where the trans man's, like, on the beach, and one of the other dudes asks the chick, like, yo, what's wrong with homie's chest? And they're like, oh, he's trans. He had top surgery. And they're like, oh, that's so cool. And, like, they didn't make this huge spectacle out of this person being trans. It was so nonchalant. And that always stuck with me, because it was, like, the first time I think I realized, like, some people won't care. Some people will just be totally chill. They just don't know, and so they might ask about it because it's a little weird that you got scars across your chest, but a lot of the times they're just going to move on. So I thought that was really neat. And then, Shameless had a trans character that I thought was done really well. When you first are introduced to this character, they're just, they're just working. They're working their job. It's not even the biggest thing about this person isn't that they're trans until they become romantically involved with Ian. And then it changes into this whole other thing. But I don't know. I feel like trans men representation has been so much better than the trans woman side of things, at least from my experience. And it kind of makes me a little sad, honestly, like, because I know a lot of wonderful trans women, obviously, and so it's just really sad to see that, like, why do trans men not get that same representation? Like, we've had bad representation too, like I said, with Max and things like that. There's plenty of examples, but not near as much. So, my experience with it has been that, trans men definitely got off a little easier in the representation in film and media and TV and things like that.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with you on the bad representation side of like I think it was Max, right?
Right.
With the testosterone thing. And it because like for me it's like, you know, obviously like pre-taken HRT,
right.
I never experienced anything like that, and I had, you know, natural
Right.
testosterone running through my body at the time, and I was like, never did I ever
Right.
act like that towards somebody, and it's like that's a bad take, like a really bad take. And I will say that like I seen the difference getting on HRT. Like I definitely was more calmer, but I wasn't ever like angry.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't like lashing out on anybody. So yeah, I felt like I seen that as well, and I thought that was a bad take on
Yeah, I mean the whole show
sure.
is very like the whole time you can tell like you're being led to not like Max. You're not supposed to like Max. Max's character is not supposed to be this lovable character that you get along with. Like they very clearly were trying to paint the trans man in a bad light, that you should just stay a woman. You're giving up the most precious thing by doing this. Like, so we have our own share of bad representation, and clearly people behind the representation coming to life that didn't care for us too much, but significantly less to our counterparts.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess since we're talking about bad representation and we have only mainly been talking about good representation, I think it's only right to show the first one here, which is I'm going to skip to a certain section because this is like 2 minutes and I really don't want to watch the whole thing because now I think a lot differently about the movie anyway. At the time, maybe I watched it and didn't think anything or didn't really latch onto that scene. But this is a scene in Ace Ventura where this paints a trans woman in a terrible light, makes fun of them, also like makes it to be this sick thing, and everyone's throwing up when they find out that it's a trans woman, and it's just horrible. But I'm gonna share it here. So 1 second.
If you were to look up professional football's all-time bone, be missing these. That kind of surgery can be done over the weekend. But I doubt very much if he could find the time during his busy schedule to get rid of big old Mr. Kanish. Oh boy. Ace, come here. Would you excuse me for just 1 second? My esteemed colleague, Mr. Marino, has just brought some new evidence to my attention. Now, history has certainly shown that even the most intuitive criminal investigator can be wrong from time to time. But if I am mistaken, if the lieutenant is indeed a woman, as she claims to be, then, my friend, she is suffering from the worst case of hemorrhoids I have ever seen! That's why Roger Podacter is dead! He found Captain Winky! Good night, everybody! A wonderful audience. I'll be here all week. Sure to tip your...
Yeah, that's gross. It's just like a super, super cheap shot. Like really cheap shot. It's so over dramatic. Like anybody that has any experience with tucking, whether it be, a trans person or you've watched RuPaul enough, that's not how that goes. That's not accurate whatsoever. And then for everybody to be like sickened by this thing and this be like the villain of and the whole reason they're a villain is because they're trans. It's just, and I love Jim Carrey. Like when I pieced this together and I saw this, I was like, dude, how did I miss this? One, I mean, I was a kid, I didn't pay attention, but also it's just so sad to see someone that like I really have enjoyed take part in this. And mind you, it was a long time ago. people change. I don't necessarily think that this has anything to do with Jim Carrey's like stance on anything by any means. That's a stretch, but it's just sad. It's just really sad, and it's disappointing, and it's so inaccurate and just cheap. Absolutely terrible. I can't believe that anybody allowed this to be a thing. Like, this had to pass so many different people to get approved, and they're like, yeah, that's not a problem. It's terrible.
Yeah, it just kind of shows you like I don't think now we would ever see anything like that, but it's crazy, like, because in the 90s there were a ton of bad representations. You know, there was The Crying Game, which was another horrible one, because you know, I'm gonna end up sharing it here, but there, like, even in that one, like, that was, I guess I didn't really watch the movie as a whole, but I've seen enough scenes to kind of get what's going on. And the one that I'm going to end up sharing here shortly is like, this guy was in a relationship with a trans woman, and basically tells her, like, he wants her to be a man, and she's like, "You want me to be a man?" And it's like, it's this whole thing. The Crying Game was not a good representation. Ace Ventura was horrible. And it's just sickening to see that was comedy in the 90s. Yep. Like, people laughed at that and thought that was funny. And I'm sure even now, if people saw that, they'd probably laugh too. But it's not something to joke about. Like, that's reality for trans women, and that's not how tucking goes. No. Like, it's not, that's not real.
No, not at all. Not at all.
So, yeah, that's the crazy part of everything. And yeah, like you said, if you watch like RuPaul or something like that, like, yeah, it's just it's much different. And for them to be the villain in all of this is absolutely insane to me.
It's just so sad. And you know, I'm not a very soft person. I can take a joke. I make jokes like that are pretty, you know, out there, a little out of pocket most of the time, you know, in private. I know my audience, that kind of thing. But I can make jokes, I can take a joke, all of that good stuff. But this is just so distasteful, and it's just perpetuating like actual transphobia, just being uncomfortable with trans people just because they are trans. There was nothing else that was wrong here besides that. That was, you know, the truth is revealed. It's this big boom moment of the movie, and it's really sad that that's the way they decided to go about that. They could have gone so many different avenues that didn't poke fun at a person's existence, a very real struggle that people actually go through day in, day out. Yeah, they could have done this so many different ways. So it's just disappointing.
Yeah, the surgery comment was a little like harsh, you know, as well. Like, oh, you could just go get this surgery on a weekend. Like, it's, you know, like, it's not this big ordeal. I found that to be very
exactly.
distasteful,
I mean, that's
as well.
Not, they're making it seem like it's just this like willy-nilly thing I can just decide to do, and it's not that big deal. Just get it done over the weekend and back to work on Monday kind of thing. That's not the case at all. It's trans people that are considering this surgery. I mean, you have, like, for you to do something along those lines, like, there's clearly something real going on, you know, something that you're struggling with. And it's not just an over the weekend thing. Like, there is a full recovery process to this. It is not an overnight thing. It is grueling. It is removing body parts and forming new ones. Like, that's intense. That's intense. Like, and it's not to be downplayed at all. That's a huge thing for a trans person to go through, and for it to just be a joke. And oh, it's just so easy. It's just so simple. Haha. It's not. It's just like making a mockery of the whole thing when it's very real for most people.
Exactly. And I think that we need to have some like new Hollywood viewpoints. Like, we need to see something like, whether if it's a TV show or a movie that doesn't poke fun, doesn't show just the negative sides. I mean, you know, there's, I think I was looking for it earlier, A Girl Like Me. It's the Gwen Arroyo story, and that one is very similar to the one we were talking about earlier. With Hilary Swank,
Boys Don't Cry.
I think it was Boys Don't Cry. Yeah, very similar in the way that, like, in the very end, it's all about how this trans person didn't disclose things, or they put themselves in this position, and this is what they got. This is what they deserved. And it's like, really? Like, I know in A Girl Like Me, what happened is basically the guy was like putting her up against the wall, was like forcing her into like this sexual encounter, and she was like,
Yep.
no, she didn't want it, but yet he continued, and then found out about it, and then ended up raping,
Right.
graping, I guess,
Right.
for YouTube
Edit and
purposes,
post.
in TikTok or whatever. But exactly. But that's what really happened to her, and then she ended up getting unalived because of that process. And then the narrative is, oh, it was her fault. She should have never put herself in that position. She should have said something. What do you say when you get slammed up against the wall?
Yeah, regardless of what your story is, what is in your pants, nobody should be put in that position. That's the main problem with that. It's not the fact, like, I will always say that if you are going to be romantic with a person and intimate with a person, or if you're at your doctor, you should probably disclose things. Absolutely, that is for everybody's comfortability, consent purposes, all sorts of things, right? So I do think that's important, but to say that for anybody to have watched that film and take away that, well, that person didn't disclose, so that's what they get. That's why you got to disclose. It's not, I mean, sure, kind of, yes, but the fact that it's always that narrative, and that people can take that away from that the main problem is that we shouldn't be assaulting people. That's the villain in the story, not the trans person.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, disclosure should be a thing, like you said, to like a partner, you're before you get to that level. You should definitely tell them, and they should be well aware before you're even close to like a sexual encounter or anything like that. And then like your medical team, things like that, they deserve to know. I was an EMT. Like, I understand that if I didn't tell my medical team and I need surgery and they need to give me anesthesia, but yet they read my license and they see female and they give me a female's dose of anesthesia, I'm going to wake up in the middle of that surgery, because the amounts are totally different for males and females. And as much as we don't like disclosing these things, sometimes it makes sense to.
Yep, I agree. And like disclosure, honestly, like sometimes it's not that simple. And while I do think that disclosure is important, it's not always that easy for somebody to just tell somebody that. It's a mental game. It's pretty easy to not assault a person. They're two totally different things, and even if you don't disclose, you don't deserve that. If the person is not interested once, discovering or whatever it might be, that person also has the right to just walk away. And if they decide to do anything deeper than that, or get nasty or assault you, like, that is on that person, not on you for not disclosing. It doesn't matter. The magnitude is just so different on each one.
Yeah, that's very true. No, I couldn't have said it better myself. Yeah, it's just it sucks to see that narrative, and I get it. Like, disclosure can be tough at times. Like, I've been in a medical situation like where I had to go to the ER and I was looking like this, and I had already had like my license changed where it said female, and I had to like pull the nurse to the side, and I was like, by the way,
okay,
I am trans, And the thing is that like she understood it wasn't a big thing. She was very respectful. She like pulled the blinds or the curtains or whatever it is like for the room, and was like, can you tell me just a little bit more, just from a medical sense? Are you in hormones? This, that, and the other, like general questions. But she was, and I live in a small town, and this is what happened in a small town. She closed the curtains. She knew that it was a rough subject for me to tell someone about. So like, she was very respectful. And I think maybe some people think it's not going to be like that. But I mean, that's how it was for me. I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but she was very respectful. When she realized that I was like not wanting to have that conversation, but realizing that
most people aren't going to make it much deeper than, at least like in a medical sense, right? Like if you're like on a date with some random dude, I can't speak up for the random dude. I don't know the guy, but most medical professionals aren't going to care. So just to, circle back to that message, it is important to disclose to your medical professionals. They're not going to care. They just want to make sure you're taken care of.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's there's others I could show, like Nip Tuck, and Ava's story on Nip Tuck. That was problematic
messed me up as a kid
in a lot of ways.
Nip Tuck was the first time I had ever seen a sex scene in my life. I was in 6th grade, and it happened to be a scene between I don't know the main guy's name. He played Dr. Doom in the Fantastic Four movies. I can't remember his name, but he was involved with a trans woman, and it was a sex scene between the two of them, and it really messed me up. Like, it was just like I would go to school and like close my eyes, and like it was all I could see. It just like it really but it was because it was so. It was the nature of it and the way that the person was treated. And at this point, like I had already had these feelings of like not being connected with myself. I think that started at a pretty young age. So I was already like considering like this could be a person like me. And so to see that the way that it played out, which I'm not going to get into detail, but it was a lot. It was a lot, and it really messed me up. Like Nip Tuck was not my favorite show at that point. My mom loved that show. I mean, it was on our DVR, and it like every single episode was recorded. She was obsessed, and that's all they watched. We weren't allowed to watch it with them. Now I know why. But it was a lot. Yeah. And it was very problematic. I did not like the way that they went about, and there were multiple trans characters. There were multiple trans characters on that show. It just seemed very like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like they like found a niche in that. They're like, oh, this works. This gets people riled up. Let's keep doing it. It was just super annoying. Not my favorite at all.
Yeah, for sure. No, I definitely think that Nip Tuck was not a good representation at all. I don't remember one positive light from Nip Tuck at all. Like you said, I think they found a narrative that they could put out there that riled some people up and made people upset and got people talking. That's what you want, from a show, is you want people to talk about it, whether it's good or bad. And that's exactly what happened with Nip Tuck. So, and there's a ton of other ones that we could really even go into, but I think the idea of this podcast was to show people that there has been a lot of negative representations in Hollywood. Trans people were made out to be a joke in the very beginning. Now I think it's kind of gotten better for the most part, but we still can't look past how it all started, and try to ensure that hopefully in the future we continue to have good representation. We get away from these negative topics like, the grape encounters and things like that, and it's like the disclosure, and they did or didn't say this, and that's why they're in that position. We need to get past all that. Would show the good moments, show the happiness. Let's show a good family. Like, let's show those things, because we deserve that at this point, because we've not had that kind of representation at all. Like, whether it's in standard media or Hollywood, we've not had that.
And if it is a happy trans person, or they're just kind of like a side character, they're here, they're gone kind of thing. Like, I would love to see, and like just like a normal sitcom type show that shows a trans person as like the main character and them living with their family or whatever. Like, sure, you can still like touch on the struggles and show all of that, but just so that it's accurate representation of what a trans person is, what we actually go through. Like, show the fun parts too, and that we can take a joke and we can make jokes about things, and like, it can be funny, haha. There are serious moments, but we're just a human, the same as anybody else. I would love to see us in a role that you typically see a cis person playing, and not to hide from the fact that that person's trans, but make that, a small part of them, and then the rest of them is just the main character. Like, that would be awesome, but we don't ever see anything like that ever. So I'm hoping that the more we speak out about this, the closer we'll get to seeing characters like that, and getting to see some better representation and accurate representation of how we live our everyday life.
Absolutely. And I like one thing that you said was that, like, we can take jokes, but there's a difference between a lighthearted joke and like a, hey, this has some like
making a joke at our
expense
is a lot different than just making a lighthearted joke about the experience. They're very different things.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a ton of that, especially I think Bob's Burgers had an episode with like where it had like trans women in the back, and they had like facial hair and like very bad like
correct
representation of that. But I mean, it exists, and a lot of people seem to think it's funny, but it's like it's mocking trans people is what it is, and it's not honestly funny. And so we can take a joke, right? Because I don't know about for you, but like for me, with a couple of my close friends that are trans, like sometimes we throw jokes at each other that typically if a non-trans person said it would be transphobic, but we say it because it's funny. Like I know my friend that came down from Virginia, like we would joke around with each other, and like we both wore wigs, and we would be like, "Girl, better put your hat on." Like that would be our way of saying like, "Put your wig on," and it was like
my wife and I do that. Like she'll make jokes at me all the time, and it's not like I know she loves me. She knows I love her. We're just making jokes. Like sometimes I'll make a joke about myself that's trans related, and she'll be like, "Oh, I cannot believe you said that." I'm like, it's just a joke. It's okay. Like sometimes I just have to be able to laugh at it so that I'm not constantly reminded of like that it is a struggle a lot of the times, and that there's still something going on in my brain, and this I have to do other things to move past it. So I can take a joke. I love to make jokes at my own expense. It's hilarious. I just don't want other people doing it because it's not tasteful. You don't have that right because you're not living this life. A lot of these producers that made these jokes, made these spectacles, they're not trans people. Probably don't even interact with trans people on a daily basis, and it's very clear in the way that they represent us. So we're just asking, for better representation, but understand we're not all soft, and we can all take a joke as well.
Absolutely, and that's what I want people to know, because that's like I said, we laugh at ourselves
all the time
behind the lines. Like maybe we make these little jokes, but I mean those are jokes that typically are only made,
Correct.
between other
we know our audience.
community members, like if you're trans yourself, right? But we do that because we can laugh about it and things like that. But that doesn't mean that like outside of that people can say it or make a mockery or whatever. So I definitely think we need to continue with the line of good representation, not making fun of people, not mocking them or anything like that. There is more and more of us who are being recognized on a daily basis, because of social media and things. Some good ones, some bad ones. But overall, there is definitely more trans people than there ever was before. I think it's just because, comfortability and representation. But I think those people deserve good representation when they are, going through that journey rather than seeing misinformation and things like that. So that's what we try to do on this podcast. We try to educate people to what we believe is correct. Try to help people, like steer them the right way, and things like that. So hopefully if you've been listening to the podcast, you're getting that from this. I definitely am interested to hear some comments about how everyone feels the podcast is going, where you would like to see it go, some topics that maybe we have not discussed that you would like to hear spoken on in regards to the podcast. And any closing words from you and Braxton?
I mean, basically what I've said. I just hope to see better representation. I'm glad to see that we have come so far. That part's definitely not lost on me, but I'm excited to see how we progress in trans representation. I think that we're on the right path. I think we have a lot of decent people out there fighting the good fight on getting us better representation. So I'm very excited to get to be a part of that and be around for that and be around for the shift that's happening. So hopefully others feel the same.
Absolutely. I hope so too. And, hopefully everyone enjoyed this episode, and, hopefully you'll tune in for the next one. And in the meantime, you all have a great rest of your day, and enjoy your weekend. If you're watching this on the weekend, if not, then enjoy whatever day you're watching this.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.